The main topic of conversation for a lot of estate agents this week is the BBC Panorama documentary that went out on Monday. And it exposed dubious practices. What they did was they managed to get a secret employee, an undercover employee, into two leading agencies. They mainly looked at one agency who were choosing buyers that looked after their own needs in terms of they would pay the agency more money rather than being the best people to buy that property. In the other agency, they were talking about overvaluing, basically lying about a property's value in order to flatter the client and win the instruction. And then they were targeting their staff by giving them bonuses to get price reductions. That's not really in the spirit of a estate agency. As an estate agent, you are paid by the seller to do the best job possible. But to me, the biggest story here was the industry's take on that documentary, what other agents thought of it. The first thing I would like to sort of notice is that there was very little in the estate agency press regarding this article. On Estate Agent Today, they barely covered this story. It wasn't a big headline. I was quite shocked. Property industry, I had a few more articles, and actually the articles are starting to come out as people think about the consequences. But the really interesting bit is when you look at the article and you scroll down and look at the comments, what the other agents think of this. There's a variety of comments. The first one on this particular one is saying this article was needed. Been waiting for it far too long. The second one talks about the double bubble. Now this is where the agency did a deal and they described it as a double bubble where they managed to persuade the seller, their client, the seller, to go with the buyer who was going to use their agency to sell their own house. So basically there were two sets of fees involved rather than one. And they chose a buyer who wasn't proceedable over a cash buyer. A buyer in a really good position would give a really straightforward transaction. But that cash buyer wasn't using the in-house legal services. Again, the agency makes a lot of money off that. And they weren't using the in-house mortgage facilities. They were lose as far as the agency was concerned. For the client, they were win-win-win. So the comment here is the double bubble story at the end dramatically hyped as though the vendor had been wronged, but the hot buyer was the highest offer anyway. Well, actually, this double bubble buyer, this buyer, hadn't got pure cash, was not the hot buyer. They should never have been. You scroll down, there's more similar comments. There's one about ridiculous. Most agents do not have a clue about the regulations. Well, that's what I see every day. They should have a clue. It's their job.